Hi, if you're going through anxiety, nausea, I just want to share my story and just hope that it helps you feel less alone, because one of the worst things about anxiety, nausea is feeling like you're all alone. And I just want to tell you that you are not alone. I am here with you and we'll get through this. We will get through this. Anxiety, nausea began at me from a very, very young age. I actually didn't realize that I had that for a long time, but my mom always said I was the difficult kid who didn't want to eat. When we were going through very hard times, she always had trouble to get me to eat. And one of my earliest memories was that someone was trying to feed me and I felt nauseous and I felt like I was going to throw up, and that's why I didn't eat. That was all I knew. But at the time, I was too young to know that what was happening to me, and I wasn't able to tell anyone, especially my mom. And she ended up looking at so many doctors to see what was wrong with me, like if there was any illness. But in the end, it really, I believe, was anxiety, nausea, even though I was too young to actually know what was happening. But later on, when I went to high school, was the first time I was actually aware of it, because I had gone from a very sheltered, small primary school, which I knew a lot of people. I knew it was friendly, it was lovely. I just didn't know anything about high school. It was such a horrifying experience for me. To be stuck in like a new environment with people I didn't know at all was terrifying to me. I did not do very well with new things like that, and because the place was so big and I got lost and I didn't know anyone, I didn't have friends, I was just going through the worst anxiety. And I would take the bus in the morning, and that's when I started to notice when it first happened, was when I took the bus. I would feel really nauseous on the way, because sometimes I would eat before I leave the house, and the eating and being on the bus and having to sway around was not a good combination. So I would feel really, really nauseous by the time I'm at school, and it would go all the way until the first or second period in class, and I would just think that, am I sick? Am I going crazy? What's going on with me? I didn't even know what was happening, and it was just really confusing. And I remember just feeling so nauseous that I was just trying to figure out what I can do to make it go away. Like sometimes I found even drinking a juice would make it worse, so I would stop eating or drinking at the time. And luckily it went kind of down by the time the first or second lesson started. I would feel like it's almost gone, but it happened every morning. So I started to anticipate that, and I started to realize, oh my god, this is something that's going to happen to me every morning. So I started getting more anxious about leaving the house, and because of that I started to just the nausea almost comes as soon as I anticipate or think it's coming. So I got to a point where it was really difficult for me to get to school. And when I was young, my grandfather used to tell me that if you ever feel nauseous or want to throw up, taking water is going to help you. So from a young age, I formulated this statement in my mind: drink water and your nausea will go away. Even though that's not exactly the case, but that's what I believed. So I always thought water was my comfort. If I had some water with me, I feel like I was safe. If I didn't have water with me, I would just panic, and it would probably start a panic attack. So I always felt like I had to have water with me. And it was very difficult at school, because sometimes assembly time we couldn't bring our bags, so I couldn't have water with me. I didn't even have anywhere to put it, and I sometimes tried to put it in a little container and just put it in my pocket. Even that would give me some kind of reassurance. And it was very difficult, because one thing I noticed that the anxiety, nausea progressed was that it would go from where you just feel nauseous and like butterflies in your stomach and you feel uncomfortable. It would progress to the way where it would go up, and then you might read something or you might try to talk, self-talk, and it goes down a bit. So it's like you're trying to say, it's okay, it's okay. And then I feel you're getting better. And then all of a sudden it will go up again. But that up is worse than before. And then you will go, like, try to self-talk, and it'll go down again. And then up, down, up, to the point where you're so high up. That's what I call the peak, which is what I call a panic attack. That's what I define a panic attack, is where your nauseousness and your symptoms are going up and down, up and down, up and down, to the point where it goes to a point where you're like literally shaking your hands and you're dry retching, and things like that has happened to me. And sometimes it feels like the most horrible thing to go through, when you're scared of throwing up and having to reach the point where you want to dry heave is really, really terrifying. And I'm going to tell you that a few times when I've done that, especially on public transport or while I'm out, like for example when I went to see the movies, I started getting scared of leaving the house. I was scared to take public transport, I was scared of going to the cinemas, I was scared of seeing movies with friends, I was even scared of having friends come over, because I remember that one time where a friend came over, we were just having fun watching TV, and then all of a sudden I just felt this urge of nauseousness and I had to rush off into the bathroom. I locked the door, I sat in there, and I just let that horrible thing peak at its worst before it slowly came down. And that's when it was just horrifying. I couldn't see through that, I couldn't see past that. I was just in such a panic that like afterwards my hands would just be all shaking and I would just feel so sick. And that's when at night I remember going through these panic attacks where I just didn't want anyone to see. I didn't want anyone to know that I was going through that, because I felt like they might reject me or might be scared of me or something like that. And it really has to do with a lot of childhood traumatic experiences. If you find that you've gone through childhood traumatic experience, especially when it has to do with vomiting, you're likely to be really scared of the thought of that. Like even the thought of it just will give you a panic attack. In my room I would just be trying to read a book to try to forget about it, to try to self-talk myself, and it just never worked. I tried different meditations, I even bought a program that was supposed to help, but it really didn't do all that much. Some of the things in the program really do help. Like for example, one of the things that I remember reading was something like, if you get really close to a panic attack, splash cold water on your face. It could really help bring your heart rate down, and that could actually help, because when you're really panicked, your heart will go fast. And one of the things I actually remember doing, which I never mentioned in the other videos, was that I would feel like my saliva will accumulate in my mouth because I'm so anxious to actually swallow the saliva, to the point where it would just become a full-fledged like mouthful of saliva, which I couldn't swallow, that I would save up, and then I would soon need to spit it somewhere because it was so huge. And so I would just be like trying to spit it out, and then I would have to like hide it, put it somewhere, and then just it was such a scary thing because I was just unable to swallow my spit. And I find that when I'm really anxious, the spit kind of goes up a lot, and it's like it overproduces, so I'm in the cycle of feeling like I'm going to throw up if I swallow my spit. So that was another thing that I went through, and the panic attack was really horrible. It was something where I would just feel like a bit of nauseousness, and then it would just go down a bit, and then it will go up, and that's worse. And sometimes even when I'm trying my hardest to self-talk in a positive way, it still hits me harder, to the point where I would be like literally dry retching. And luckily I've never thrown up when I was anxious, but I have come very close. And there was one time where I remember I was in Melbourne, and it was like I had a cold, I was feeling anxious, and like my parents and there was another girl who was with me, and they were like having a kind of almost like a debate, and it felt like at the point, like any person's sound, like sometimes you feel like you're in a downward spiral, you're getting anxious and more anxious, and the things that are happening around you might really trigger it. For example, you might be reading a scary article, or someone might be just having an argument, and that will just tip you over the edge, and you suddenly feel like your full panic attack is forming and coming, and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to be sick. I absolutely can relate to that, and that's happened a lot. And often, sometimes the worst thing about the anxiety is that it is triggered by the anxiety itself. And that's the worst part, is that when you feel like when you're okay, sometimes the anxiety might be triggered by something that you're afraid of. For example, it could be that your family just saw someone that threw up and you're scared that you're going to catch it, or something like that they ate something that got them sick and you just felt really anxious, or even someone at school got sick or something like that. It could be something very triggering for you, and then you start feeling the anxiety, and then all of a sudden the anxiety just gets worse and worse, and suddenly you find yourself not sure if you're feeling nauseous because of anxiety or you're actually nauseous because you're ill. So that is a very difficult thing, and that's often just made me feel like I was questioning my own sanity. I thought I was alone. I thought I was just going crazy. It was just such a hard time where I couldn't even really tell people, because when I was afraid of how they would react. And that was before I even knew anxiety was a thing. The first time I actually knew anxiety was a thing was when I saw in a Dolly magazine. It was one of those like teenage magazines where it was like someone write in their story or something, and then the person said they felt really nauseous and anxious, and it was like, and they were suffering from anxiety. And that was the first time I ever heard of that. So I actually like thought, oh my god, that is actually a thing that people actually go through. I'm not just crazy, I'm not just alone in this world. That was the first time. And back then we didn't have like internet like this, so it was very hard for me to search up symptoms online on Google and things like that. It was very like not a very digital time at this. So now it's much easier to search up things, but so that's why I really want to share my story. And during the time at school, it would get to a point where I was afraid of things, and things like speeches at school would trigger a big anxiety attack. And one time I had it really bad, to the point where I was not able to eat very well, and the words "dinner's ready" would trigger me into a full-blown panic attack because I felt pressured to eat the food when I was nauseous. And when you're nauseous and you think about eating, that's the worst combination. You just think, oh, you're gonna be sick. So that was very difficult. I had to tell my parents then, and sometimes when they overreacted with more panic, it would make it worse. So sometimes it really helped when you tell them to just be calm around you, just say it's okay. It's like, just try to be very calm and say it's okay, you're gonna get through this, there is hope. That's sometimes all you really need to hear. And just tell them, and make sure that they don't pressure you to eat when you need to. Like, don't pressure to have dinner at the table or something like that. Just tell them to tell you that it's okay, you can eat whenever you want, you can eat when you're hungry, and you're not gonna starve to death. It's okay. Like, all you really need at the time, for me at least, was to hear that it's okay. It's like, because the idea of starving to death freaked me out and made me more anxious, and the more anxious I got, the harder it was to eat. So when they told me that it's okay, you know, it's just, you can eat whenever, that kind of helped me at least. So if it helps you, just get someone else to tell you that over and over. And also, this got to a point where in 2007 was probably when I was really underweight, and at that time, I still remember to this day how hard it was to eat a piece of watermelon. And I wouldn't go out to eat it out at all. Going out to eat would just be a horrible nightmare, and eating anything was troublesome. And like, dinner's ready would just trigger a panic attack. At that time, I didn't even want to leave the house. I was stuck at home every day, sometimes lying in bed all day, just being anxious and waiting for the nausea to strike. It's almost like I know it's coming. It's a thing where you expect it and then it comes. And I just even didn't understand why. And one of the things I remember my doctor telling me is that when you're really nervous, your stomach acid is very strong, and if you've eaten a lot of food, the stomach acid will just sit in your stomach and make you feel really nauseous, because the stomach acid is your blood is leaving your stomach from digesting the food and going to your hands and feet for that flight or fight response, because you're anxious. So your stomach is left with all this acid to irritate it. So that's why one of the things that has helped me to the absolute biggest, it's the life changing for me. That's why every time I make a video, I will always say this, is that one of the things that was life changing for me was when I discovered ginger capsules. The first time I discovered it, it was just like a complete coincidence. I went to the chemist and I was looking at the things, and I was just like, wouldn't it be great if I could take like a pill that could just take the nausea away? I thought, but I thought, I would never find something like that. And then I happened to see like this tablet that said motion sickness. It was for motion sickness. It was for nausea related, like motion sickness related nausea. It could help. And I thought, you know what, there's nothing I could lose. It was just ginger. So my family had a history of cooking with a lot of ginger in their fried rice, like so much, and they always talked about how healthy I made them. So I thought, okay, ginger is not going to be too scary. I bought it. I remember the first day I took it because I was feeling a bit nauseous, and I couldn't believe the results. I couldn't believe how big of a difference it made in my stomach. Immediate. It was almost like an immediate, like within 5 minutes, I could feel the difference. It was like a very warm feeling. But what I find that often I would need to take more than 2 ginger capsules for it to be effective. So when I'm feeling nauseous, I would take 2 to 4, sometimes maybe even 5 when I'm feeling really nauseous. And honestly, sometimes you might be trying to be brave and think, oh, I don't need it this time, I'm gonna get through it, and then you wait till it's too late before you take the ginger and it'll work slower. So it's important to not delay. Just as soon as you feel the uncomfortableness and the nausea, just take the ginger right away. And for me, it really helps when I take the ginger without water. And the reason why is because if I feel it going down really slowly down rather than just being washed down to the bottom of my stomach, because of that, I find that it works really fast in my stomach. I feel this warm feeling, and the warm feeling is almost like a counter to the nausea. At least that's what my personal experience is. And there are times where I've eaten food that really was a bad combination, like very spicy food, or one time I think I ate like a salad and bread that was really cold and just triggered a massive nausea attack at someone's house, and I got so freaked out. I literally took like 10 ginger pills, and it eventually went down. But also, it really is important that sometimes certain food combinations can really aggravate the anxiety nausea, especially things like milk if you are lactose intolerant, and oily stuff mixed with cold stuff, oily stuff with water, just combinations that you don't think would fit very well, or too spicy sometimes would also affect it. I really recommend that you always have some ginger with you everywhere you go, because even if you have it in your pocket or something, because the ginger pills, you can even have a little container with just 5 ginger pills in there. You don't even have to bring a whole bottle, just a tiny bit in your pocket will just give you that reassurance that you need when you're going out, if you're really afraid of going out, and it will be a lifesaver. It really does help. At least I know it's not going to help everybody, I understand that, and so some people it might help the first time and then it might just go back, but at least try it, because it's nothing to lose if you try. And if you find that it's not helping fast enough, just take a bit more. It's really okay. I know a lot of people have asked me if it's okay to take more than 2 pills. It is okay. I've taken 6 or 7 pills at once and it's fine, because it's the ginger is a spice that my parents have just cooked with. All it's really going to do is just give that really warm, really strong warm feeling in your stomach, and that's actually very good for anxiety nausea. And I find that ginger is really good with taking that physical symptom away to the point where you can maybe manage your other symptoms like shaking hands and things a lot better. And there have been instances where I got into a big panic attack at home because my son had some kind of stomach bug, and I was so freaked out. I would get a big panic attack and I would take the ginger, and then I just don't experience any symptoms. And I don't even know whether, because the illness is there, you know they've gotten some kind of stomach bug, but I've never actually gotten sick, even when I'm exposed to the particles, the vomit and things like that. I would be cleaning it and I would not get sick because I'd taken the ginger. And I believe that even if I did get sick, the ginger still can help, because if you read articles like ginger can stop like 90 or 60% of kids from throwing up, these are just very reassuring articles that will really help calm your mind if you're in the middle of like a stomach bug problem in your home, because that can happen. And one thing that was really difficult, I remember in my younger time, was when my parents said, when my mom said we're going to go to China for a visit, and then she told me her friend ate leftover sushi and got salmonella or something like that and got sick. And I was so scared of going overseas. I was so terrified of just going to China and experiencing the same thing. I just felt like it was a death sentence. It was so horrifying, because when you go overseas, you can't really just rely on like home cooked meals. You have to eat out sometimes, and I was just so scared. It felt like I had no choice but to be sick, and in the end I just had so much trouble eating, and even like food that was cooked at home I just couldn't eat. And it was when I was really skinny. Actually, I didn't discover ginger till afterwards, so that time I really did suffer. But I did find that dong quai, which is like a herbal medicine, is a Chinese herbal medicine, also helped me with my appetite a little. I just found that after drinking the soup is horrible tasting. It is really bitter and horrible, but if you can stomach it, it might help with your appetite, because that is really, it just one day I remember I was just so like didn't want to eat, and back then I would just be walking on the street feeling like I was like one of my eyes was feeling like darkened out. I just felt like I could black out any moment. I was so weak, I was just unable to do anything. I was lying in bed all the time. And when I started to drink that soup, and then that's when I found I had slightly more appetite. I was able to eat more, and that gave me a little more energy, because before that I was just completely, I felt like when I was on the street I could just black out because I was going dark of lack of energy from eating. I believe I was just so scared of eating, and in the end I didn't even get sick at all. So it's like sometimes you just have to read some positive stories, and you gotta have something that can really calm you down. And that's why I stress the ginger so much, even though you might have never tried it and you might not know where to get it. But the ginger is just the powder that you can buy at the spice. If you can't find ginger capsules, you can always make your own. You can get some empty capsules, just buy the ginger spice, the powder, and then put them in. It's the same thing. A lot of chemist or herb stores or vitamin stores will have the capsules. My favorite are the capsules with the kind of like plasticky thing around it, because that's the easiest to swallow, and swallowing without water I find that helps me more. I find that works better than the big pills that are harder to swallow, because I feel like they would get stuck in my throat. So the capsules are always my favorite ones to try. So if you can try it. When I lived in America, there was a lot of cheap ginger capsules, even in Walmart. There were like $6 capsule. Honestly, it's my lifesaver. Even now after all these years, when I'm saying that I'm able to go out to places and eat out, but I still have ginger with me. I still do, because there was one time, like even one time I remember I was just going through a lot of stress and anxiety, and I would feel really anxious, and I would take a ginger as soon as I felt really anxious, and it really helped. Otherwise I'd probably still be having similar type of panic attacks like I used to, because these kind of things sometimes never goes away. And one thing I really want to stress out is don't compare your good times with the bad times, because this is what it's like when you're good. When you're good, you're like here. Your anxiety level is here. You might experience 6 months even where you don't have a big panic attack and you don't have anxiety, nausea, and then sometimes an event right here will trigger it, and then you will go into a high anxiety level where this becomes the new normal. For example, like you will feel anxious, and then you might have good times, and then you start going up there even, and that on top is when you're really anxious. And that's when I really tell you not to compare the good times with the bad, because it's like your brain has erased what's the normal and put the high anxiety as the new normal. So you can't compare that with the 6 month where you didn't get it. And every time I remember, I would always feel so failed when I would start another bout of anxiety attacks, because I felt like I was over that, I was finished. It was like I went maybe even 6 or 8 months without it, and all of a sudden it's coming back and it's worse than before. And it just I want to tell you that that's also normal. That happened, and the best thing you can do is really to have something with you that can really ease that nausea. Because honestly, all these years I thought I was seriously ill, and it was just anxiety. Anxiety is so powerful that it can cause such a horrible physical symptom every day, and you might even not understand why. It's like even sometimes when you're not even thinking about it, you could just suddenly feel the nauseousness come on, and you don't even understand why. It's like I'm not even thinking about something, and it's all of a sudden hitting me now. So it just understand that that is something that happens, and the most important thing is to have something to really take as soon as you feel that nauseousness. And just be careful with the food combination. And I will tell, if you get acid reflux a lot, probiotics can help a lot. Yogurt, things like that can help a lot. One of the calming foods that I used to take a lot is the oatmeal. I find that that can sometimes help. Some things that don't help are like really spicy food, or curry. Indian curry can sometimes really upset my stomach because of the heavy cream. It could be really like cause an adverse effect because I was lactose intolerant. So that was just one of the experiences that I had one time when I went to a restaurant. I ate a lot of thick curry, and then I suddenly had a bad panic attack. It's almost like that bit of nausea will trigger more nausea by you being nervous. So it's just important to know like what kind of food. And also, if you're eating out, the food that I find that I find myself avoiding often, like I will still eat it sometimes, but I find myself avoiding sushi and things that are like made a long time, like kebab sushi. They're all things that I've heard a lot of horror stories about, so I tend to avoid those, although I still eat them. Like these days I'm getting better with it. Sometimes I will eat it. The things that are really good for your stomach, I believe, are ramen, freshly made ramen, because the soup has been boiling for a long time and it's got a lot of healing benefits to your stomach. So ramen is something I totally recommend. Like just hot soups that are cooked fresh, those are likely what I will take and eat if I'm feeling really anxious. Of course, you've got to trust the place that cooks it, or make it yourself. You know, when you make it yourself, you at least know like you're cooking it. When you're cooked food to the point where it's cooked, it will kill the bacteria that is going to cause you to be sick. So don't worry so much if you can cook it really thoroughly and avoid the seafood, that like raw food, raw seafood type of things that might make you feel sick. Because sometimes I remember when I had like a raw salmon one time and immediately I just felt a bit nauseous afterwards. And sometimes just, these are the foods that you really got to avoid when you're going through the anxiety, nausea, and you don't want yourself to be more sick. And also make sure you tell people about it so that they can have some kind of understanding and not treat you in a way that they don't understand what's going on and they're looking at you like, what's going on? Just tell them that it's anxiety, nausea. It's like nausea caused by a lot of anxiety, and see if anyone can help you, because sometimes you never know. I never told anyone, like my teachers or anything. I never told anyone, and I wish I did, because maybe they would have been able to help me. I was just too afraid. And that's one thing. It's like, don't be ashamed. Don't feel like people are gonna treat you in a bad way. Don't look down on yourself. It's just something that some people experience, and some people may not experience it, but some people might go through that every single day. And it's important for you to talk to someone that you trust, someone who's not going to judge you, someone who will help you. That's just so important. And I also want to mention one last thing was, for many years I was always told that taking medicine for anxiety or depression will make it worse, because it's a thing where sometimes my parents will read an article on the news and say this celebrity died from overdose of drugs and one of them was antidepressant, and all of a sudden antidepressants are going to kill you. And that's what, at least what my mum always says. And one thing, and I want to say, is that for people who are saying that, it's really just, it's kind of like saying that airplanes are very dangerous, and if you go on you're going to die of a plane crash, because all you see is one plane crash. So all of a sudden it feels like it's more dangerous than it actually is. That's the thing with news, is sometimes you see the worst cases. You don't hear about the thousands and thousands of people that are taking it that has helped them. It's really important to not just take everyone's advice who's trying to tell you when they don't understand what you're going through, because they don't understand. They don't think it's as big of a deal. And for many years I was like told not to take antidepressant, and I listened, and it got to a point where I felt like I was gonna die. I felt like I was so panicked that I wasn't gonna ever sleep again, and I was gonna die, and my little baby needed me. So I was so afraid, to the point where I said, I will do anything. And that's when I started to take the medicine, and it has helped a lot, because I know it doesn't take away the feeling altogether, but it's like before my anxiety needle was here, now it's like gone down a bit, so that it's really helped overall to calm me down in a better way. It doesn't take it away completely, but it got to a point where I'm not getting full-blown anxiety attacks over the anxiety itself, which lasts for month and month. So that medicine has been a lifesaver for me. I cannot even begin to describe how important the antidepressant has done for me. So I believe it's the combination of the medicine with the ginger, Zofran. Zofran is something I always have in the house, and also other like really strong anti-nausea medicine just for emergencies. For example, if we have the gastro, if we have stomach flu, we could take that, and it just gives you a sense of control and calmness. So I suggest just getting a prescription, just one little tub of Zofran or something like that, that will help you feel calm, and that will really help your overall. And just have that with you, have the ginger with you, because honestly, like at one stage I couldn't leave the house without having ginger with me. I just couldn't. I was so afraid. I was afraid what would happen to me. And now sometimes, like with the other medicine, with the antidepressant, I find sometimes I don't even care. I don't even notice. I still like to have ginger with me, but it's gotten to a point where I'm not in a horribly anxious situation all the time. And it has taken a long time and a long journey. I went from not being able to even leave the house at all. I was stuck in the house all day, just sitting on a chair waiting for the anxiety to happen at the same time every day, to where I can go out and explore and not feel so afraid. And I know that sometimes when you're going through the anxiety at that point in time, you might feel so dark and so low and so sad and just feel like everything is hopeless. You might feel like, what's the point of even being alive if you're just gonna suffer like this? And I've been through that myself. But honestly, I think the most important thing is to try to get your anxiety, the physical symptoms, under control. And try ginger, and also just go see a doctor and tell them about it and see if there's anything that they can do, because don't just think, oh, it's all in your head, because sometimes these physical symptoms and anxiety is as real as any other disease that we get, like heart problems and things. Just because it's happening in your mind, it doesn't mean that it's not real, and people really got to realize that and not look down on mental health. It's so important. So please, I'm begging you to get some help if you need it. Go talk to someone who's not going to judge you, who's not going to say things like, oh, it's just all in your head or anything like that. You deserve to be heard and you deserve to get well. So I really truly hope that you take care of yourself, and please drop me a message if you find anything helpful, or if you're going through the same thing. Let's chat, because I will try to respond to as many messages as I can. I will just want the best for you. Really do want you to get better. Take care of yourself, please.